to log in. Good morning, everybody. Um, Welcome to Driving Explosive Growth webinar with Mark Allen Roberts. Before we start, I'd like to do a couple things. One is to do a couple housekeeping items. One is that you will receive a copy of Mark's PowerPoint, and a recording of it will be available on our website. Um, so please use the Q&A feature for any questions you have. Mark will be kind of asking some questions throughout his presentation, so be prepared to give him some answers in chat. We'll answer questions as we go, and we'll send out a brief survey to all of you to see if there's any learnings that we could make our webinars any better. So SCORE is my name is Ed Cook. I am a SCORE volunteer here in Canton, Ohio. SCORE is a national nonprofit, began back in 1964. We currently have over 225 chapters and over 11,000 volunteers with a lot of business experience. Locally, we're funded by the Star Community Foundation, the Hoover Foundation, and we're a resource partner with the SBA. Besides sponsoring educational workshops like this, we counsel small businesses, which is really what we're about. So we counsel people that want to start a business or that have a business that they need some help with. We kind of surgically choose the right mentors to help them with those problems that they're having. Locally, we have about 47 counselors, and they each have a very unique business skill set. Our office is currently located in the Stark State University Business and Entrepreneur Building, room 331, actually. And you can see on your screen how to contact us. So if you have any problem start a business, please, before this morning, I kind of Googled Alan Roberts, and he has a very extensive career in helping businesses. I suggest that you do Google that, Mark Allen Roberts. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark. Mark, it's all yours.
Thanks, Ed, and thanks again for SCORE. It's a tremendous local resource, and if you're not working with them, I highly recommend it. I've helped at some of their workshops. You have such a depth of knowledge available to you if you reach out. And as he said, people have different disciplines that they're really strong in, so they'll help you find the right person for your business and the stage of business that you're in. As he mentioned, if you want to find me, Google Mark Allen Roberts. I don't know if you've ever Googled your name, but if you Google Mark Roberts, it's the world's most famous streaker. Guys that run naked, like through Wimbledon and the Super Bowl and, the World Series. Yeah, that's not me. And in no way will that help me, right? I've written a few books. The one that I think is why SCORE has me here today is the one on driving explosive growth. I don't know if you guys all have a coach or if you're working with SCORE coaches, but I've had the same coach for 30 years. And she said, Mark, you ought to write a book on how you've helped so many companies, particularly small companies, grow so fast. And at first I thought she was crazy because I've helped companies in plastics, metals, service businesses, training businesses, carpet cleaning businesses, you name it. But what's interesting is when I sat down and just thought about the process that we always use, it was always the same. And we're going to talk about that process. I'm going to share it. I'm also going to share a tool from an amazing book called Scaling Up. And Score is going to actually give me everybody's emails, and I'm going to send you a PDF of that tool if you'd like. But it guides us through strategy. A lot of times businesses say, Mark, I want to grow to 1 million. I want to grow to 2 million. And they create this beautiful Excel spreadsheet, but they really don't answer the question of how. So today we're just going to spend a little bit of time getting you started on answering the question, how? Sorry, it jumped ahead. Another book that I wrote is called Voice of Customer. The secret sauce when I work with companies has always been talking to their customers. I've yet to see a strategy for growth that worked really well without insights from the customers, the market, people you want to be customers. So again, when I wrote the first book, people were really intrigued by this whole voice of customer thing. People were writing to me, how do I do it? What do I do? What are some of your favorite questions? Things like that. So I wrote this book as well. But again, I'm not here selling books. I'm telling you a little bit about my background. So this is the part where we want this to be interactive. So please go into the chat. What are you experiencing today? Is your business booming? I can't keep up. Oh my goodness. My biggest challenge is just keeping up. It's strong, but it could be better. It seems to have slowed down a bit as of late, or slow, below our goals for the year. How would you answer that question? Just put in A, B, C, or D, and let me know like what you're facing, what you're seeing, and Ed will kind of give me a heads up as we're going through here. I'm hearing a lot of different things. Like, for example, my clients in defense, medical supply are booming. They can't make enough fast enough. My clients who address labor shortages, like with welders, are booming. One of my clients makes a robotic welder that does the job of 5 welders. They can't make them fast enough. But other businesses that make tangible products, manufacturers, are starting to feel a little bit of a slowdown. Some of my service businesses, people who have like staffing services and things like that, are starting to see a little bit of a slowdown. So I'm just curious, what are people saying, Ed? How are we doing in the chat?
We're doing good, Mark. I had to step out for a second. It looks like you asked them a question. So you got a mix of all your letters. You got startups, you got some C's, some D's. So they responded to you.
Yeah, it looks like I opened it up. It looks like a lot of C's and D's, but congratulations for a couple of the A's. That's really difficult to do, particularly in the economy that we're in today. Most people that I'm talking to when I speak at groups, I speak at a lot of conferences. If you're in an association that needs a speaker, please send them my name. I really enjoy, the energy that I get, helping people in front of a room. But as of late, and I would say in the last 3 months, the answer seems to be C and D. It seems to have slowed down a little. People went into 2024 very optimistic, right? They had a lot of orders. They heard a really strong feedback from their customers. It's going to be a great year. But as inflation increased and disposable income is lowering, we're starting to see some slowing. And then some businesses are just plain slow. I was just speaking with a CEO in Southern Ohio. By the way, I'm from Ohio. I grew up in Cleveland. I raised my family in Stark County. My kids went to school in both North Canton, but also Kent State. I'm from Kent State. I also spent some time at Harvard, but hopefully, I don't talk like I went to Harvard. I was just really blessed that the Timken organization sent me there to learn how to help companies. What I'm seeing is, and I don't know if you're feeling it, but it kind of feels a little uncertain. It's like, people are kind of like holding back. They're waiting to see. And when people start waiting to see, I went out and I found an article actually in McKinsey, which has tremendous resources. And the last time we had uncertain economic times, 75% of companies saw a decline in revenue. So if you're experiencing that, you're not alone. But what's interesting is 14% actually grew. They grew in uncertain and challenging economic times. And of the 14%, on average, they grew 9%. So what we're going to talk about today is how will your business be one of the 14 percenters? If you answered A, and your business is booming, how do we help you keep it booming for years to come? And applying some of the things we're about to talk about. I love this quote. It's from a famous race car driver. You can't overtake 15 cars in sunny weather, but you can when it's raining. What he's trying to say there is, if your business or your industry is starting to slow down, people are very predictable. When things slow down, they cut back their expenses. They cut back on travel. Sometimes they do headcount reductions. We've seen some pretty large headcount reductions in some local companies as of late. Tech companies are having huge, what I would call adjustments in people. But what if when everybody else is slowing down, we speed up? What if when everybody else is turning off, connecting with their customers, we start listening? And that's really how these other companies grew when most companies, 75%, actually struggled. Also, I love to read. You can tell both my kids are grown and out of the house. I have way too much time to read. I actually noted the link there, and you're going to get a PDF of this, but there's common business growth myths. So McKinsey did an article, and I just wanted to address them head on in case you believe some of them. A lot of my work with business owners, senior leadership team is actually mindset work. Do we have any limiting beliefs, things that we believe? The way our awesome minds work is we take in thoughts all day long, and we're actually talking to ourselves all day long. And what we're saying becomes beliefs, and then those beliefs turn into actions. But a lot of times those beliefs aren't true. For example, there's a myth, size matters. Only large companies can outgrow in uncertain times. Absolutely not. I've actually found the opposite. Small companies are much more nimble. They can act quicker. Companies either choose to grow or profits, but not both. Absolutely not true. Quite a few of the teams that I help are actually owners. They're in their late 60s, 70s. I actually have one client in his 90s, and they want to prepare their business for sale. And what an investor is going to look at is obviously diversified, customers. In other words, you don't have one customer that represents 40% of revenue. You have a bunch of customers, hopefully in different industries. Have your revenues been growing, but also have your gross profits been growing? Sometimes people try to get clever and they try to grow their company real fast by lowering their price, and it impacts their gross margins. But a good investor is going to see that. So I can confidently tell you, you can create a plan to grow your company profitably. Extraordinary growth is only growth in high growth industries. Well, I mentioned like my clients that serve medical supply and defense are just booming right now. That's true to a degree, but it's not true across the board. Some of the companies I've helped, like I spent 13 years in plastics. Some people consider the products commodities, but if you listen to your customers and really understand some of their challenges and you adapt to them, you can grow even in non-high growth industries. And then the other one that I hear often, particularly from maybe second, third generation owners or somebody that just bought a business is, once a low growth company, always a low growth company. Absolutely not. Again, it's mindset. Now, if you choose to grow slow, I actually typically don't work with people that want to grow slow. I'm talking like 2%, 3% a year. We can often achieve that just with a price increase. I typically work with people that want to see 20%, 30% year over year growth. But I respect you if your decision is, look, I call it more of a lifestyle business. I want to keep the business going. I want to have a healthy EBITDA. I want to have, some good draw from my business for me and my family as my employees. But I also don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to put in a lot of extra hours. I don't want to put in a lot of extra investment. I don't want to have to hire people. Okay, that's fine. That's your strategic business decision. And you will grow, 1%, 2%, 3% a year. But if you're looking to grow really fast, Just because you've been a slow growth company doesn't mean you have to stay that way. I love this quote. I got certified in a methodology called scaling up. And every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up and it knows it needs to run faster than the fastest lion or it's going to be eaten, right? And every morning a lion wakes up and it knows it needs to outrun the slowest gazelle or it's going to starve to death. So it doesn't matter whether you're a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better get moving. And that's kind of what we do, but we want to move strategically. I'd like to change it to whoever learns faster wins. When the sun comes up, you'd better be learning. And one of the things we often do is we create plans, but I've yet to see a plan after maybe 2 or 3 days of strategic planning that's perfect. We learn through executing, we learn through measuring things that matter, and then we regroup every quarter. How are we doing? We thought this was going to work. Is it working? No. Okay, what are we going to do? The goal doesn't change, but how we hit the goal does. So my book, I wrote the book, Driving Explosive Growth, to help people that want to grow really fast, but maybe they can't afford working with a coach. Maybe they just prefer, a do-it-yourself methodology. That's fine. In the book, if you do purchase it, there's a QR code in the back, and I actually give you templates for all the things you're going to need to grow your business. And they're all, they're free with the book. But the steps, number one step in growing your business is assess the current state. And that's interesting because a lot of businesses skip the first step. Where are we today? As I mentioned, voice of customer research. We call and we make sure our customers are happy. We understand the challenges that they're facing. For example, if your business can help people that are struggling to get labor, one of my clients does metal work, metal stamping, metal assembly, welding. And what we discovered was his clients, where the product was being shipped to, really struggled with getting labor to assemble it when the product comes. So it's not that his business was lost to a competitor, but we found when we interviewed customers, they needed labor. So to the credit of the CEO that I was working with, he says, well, I've got a lot of labor, in my part of Southern Ohio. So he started doing pre-assembly work and sales started going through the roof. So I tell people the answers are out there. So first we assess, we ask questions, we look at your data. There's a lot of dollars in your data if you know where to look. I typically ask very specific questions to give business owners and their leadership team some insights. We also assess your sales organization and your marketing organization. Make sure they have the skills and the tools to execute your plan. I don't know that it might not surprise you, but I would say over 50% of the teams that I work with come up with a really good plan, but their team doesn't have the skills or tools to execute. So we do the assessment. Sometimes we often do what I call a digital footprint audit. As you can imagine, everybody starts on the internet these days. I have people telling me all the time, oh no, my customers don't spend time on the internet. You're wrong. Sorry. I mean, I had one client tell me, oh, no, my clients are all Mennonite and Amish and they don't use the internet. Wrong. Actually, the data shows they use cell phones throughout the day and they don't use the internet at night. So anyways, we assess, we learn about your market, we learn about your customers, we learn about your people. And if they need training, I'd say about 1/3 of my business is training salespeople, training marketing people, working with leadership teams to make sure they trust each other. Then we take all the data we've gathered and we talk. We sit in a room and we talk about it. This is what the data says. I know that you've been in the business 30 years. I know your grandfather started the business 30 years ago and he didn't need a website. Well, your grandfather didn't have a cell phone either. Your grandfather didn't have a laptop. Times have changed. So we take a look at all the data. We prescribe some improvements. We create a communication strategy, and then we formally launch our plan. And then we keep learning and working the plan until we really refine it. So today, what I want to work on is 2 parts that really seem to help people when I work at local seminars, when they work on their business. You know, we work in our business so often. And I've had CEOs say after a conference, you know, this has really been kind of a treat because, you know, I got to put my head above the weeds for a couple minutes and work on my business. And there's two things that really help when we start working on the business, on a strategy, and that's defining your BHAG and tuning up the strategy that you have. What's your BHAG? In the chat, just put in a Y for yes or an N for no. Have you heard the term BHAG and do you know what it means? I'm seeing a lot of yeses, a couple no's, no, no. All right, well, tell you what, a BHAG was something that Jim Collins came up with years ago, best-selling author, stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. So what is your goal for your business? I just met with a business today. They're around 8 million, but within 5 years, they want to be 75 million. That's their BHAG. It's a big goal. The day we discuss the goal, we probably don't even know how we're going to get there. It's just our goal. It's the mountaintop that we're going to be climbing towards. Because what I found was the people who tell me I want to grow 2 to 3% year over year, they often give me a list of like 30 things they need to do that. But when we give somebody a goal like this client that says, you know, I want to be 75 million, typically we're going to find 4 or 5 things that really need to happen if that's what you want to be and that's who you want to be. So the goal actually kind of pulls you and your team into the future, and it makes sure that what you do today, tomorrow, next quarter, next year aligns with that goal. One of the challenges I found, I've owned a couple businesses. I've been the CEO of a couple companies, presidents of companies. My favorite role, though, is like VP of sales and marketing, helping sales teams, you know, serve their customers and not sell them. But one of the things that, you know, people often struggle with is as entrepreneurs, we always have great ideas. What a BHAG does is it reins you in. Does this new idea to do this that I just discovered that as an unresolved problem, does that align with where I want to go as a company? If it does, then we talk about it and we put it into the strategy. If it doesn't, we put it on the shelf and we stay focused. Execution is one of the biggest challenges I find with small companies just because we're so busy. And one of my roles as a coach is to come alongside and make sure we do the things that matter. So we assess the current state. As I said, we look at your data. You know, what accounts are up, what accounts are down. Interesting, you know, all the accounts that are they up in particular markets and why? And what are they buying? We look at your people. A lot of the teams that I help might only have 2, 3, 5 salespeople. Well, I have a formal assessment that looks at 21 sales skills. And very quickly we figure out, great, your team is amazing at selling your product. They understand the application, but then they also might struggle with some skills. 50% of people in selling roles today have never been trained to sell. So, you know, again, that's maybe where you look in the mirror and it's like, I do have a couple salespeople and you know what? They've never been trained either. So the challenge is, what are they saying? And are they saying things that actually turn into revenue or could they, you know, improve their overall effectiveness? We look at your website. Like I said, a website audit is a modest investment. You figure 70% of sales happen, they start when somebody finds you on the internet. If you're not found, like on the first page, there are ways to be found on the first page. For example, if you Google fix sales problems, my website is #1 in the world. Yep, Mark Roberts from Canton, Ohio. #1 in the world. How'd I do that? Did I pay for it? No, what you'll find is there are people that sponsored their sites and they pay a lot of money to be ranked above me. And you'll see right next to their name, sponsored. But mine isn't sponsored. I did it with content. I try to do it every week, maybe twice a week. I give people free content articles about problems that I often see customers face and how to solve them. And that content is what drove my rank. And that's actually a strategy. But again, assess your website, make sure it's doing what you want. In that assessment, we also ask you, what are your 3 top competitors? And we can scrub their websites and tell you the keywords and phrases that are bringing people to your competitor instead of you. So we have more information. So we have information about your website. We have information about your people. We have information about your customers. We also look at your transaction data. And again, if you're in business, you're a smart person and you have a smart team. With current data, smart teams can make really important things happen. I look at it like doing an MRI on your business. Just recently, I was reminded I'm not 27 anymore. I was at the gym, I was doing some bench pressing, I was feeling pretty good, and I tore up my left shoulder. And when I went to the doctor, if the doctor would have said, okay, take off your shirt, I'm going to give you a local painkiller and we're going to cut this open and see what's happening, I would have ran, right? But unfortunately, that's how a lot of businesses operate. Instead, they ran an MRI, they did x-rays, they did some tests on mobility, and they found that actually what I did was I strained a tendon. It wasn't nearly as bad, and they prescribed physical therapy. And that physical therapy is a lot like training that I give salespeople. I actually wrote an article on how physical therapy is very much like sales training. It's not a one and done. You can't go someplace and get trained in sales and then hope, the day after you're better. A friend of mine and a colleague says you can't become a black belt watching Bruce Lee movies, right? It's something that we strategically grow over time. And again, I was really blessed. The Timken company sent me to Harvard and taught me how to teach adults and learn over time. So we do an assessment, we do what I would call an MRI of your business, and then we look at trends. What trends are impacting your customers? Maybe put some into the chat. What are some trends that you see are impacting the customers, your customers? It could be economic trends. It could be, inflation. It could be a lack of labor. Just feel free to put into the chat what you have heard is impacting some of your customers. Mergers and acquisitions, absolutely. I work with a lot of private equity firms. Typically, a private equity firm might invest in 10 companies. 5 are actually doing pretty well. 3 are doing okay. And then a couple just aren't performing. And those are the folks they send me in to help. Labor, absolutely, Peggy. Labor is a challenge for everybody. One of my clients is in the HVAC business, and they needed 4 people in the plant. They hired 4 people, only 2 showed up the first day. And then by lunchtime, one of them left. So we really got to address this label. People not wanting to work or not responding, absolutely. There's some wonderful recruiting firms in Ohio, though, so don't give up. There are people that are connecting with really quality people and helping organizations. But yeah, those are some of the trends that are really affecting our customers, probably affecting you as well. But how do we learn about them? I don't know if you've taken a Lyft ride or an Uber ride, but I really give credit to David Risher from Lyft. He just became the CEO. He came over from Amazon. And the first thing he did was got certified to drive Lyft. So he's out there driving cars, interviewing actual consumers. And what he heard was female passengers would prefer a female driver. So he took that insight, turned it into a process, and I'm sure Uber and everybody else is going to follow him. But when's the last time, like if you run your business, that you've talked to a customer, you've listened to their problems, you maybe checked in? One of the things when I work with teams is I ask the senior leadership team to make 3 phone calls a month, just 3. And I want you to check in and interview people. I don't want you to sell them. How are you doing? How are we doing for you? What are some challenges and how can we help you? That's it. But just imagine if you had a team of 5 leaders every month making 3 calls over a year's time, think about the insights that you would get. But again, I give this guy credit. He comes in as the CEO, very humble guy, gets in a car and starts driving passengers around. The other thing we need to know are what are your strengths, weaknesses, and constraints? We got to be honest about this stuff, right? Because if we're going to build a strategy, we have to be open and transparent. We have to have a lot of trust. There's a great book called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. And if you can envision a pyramid, the very bottom of the pyramid is trust. Does your team trust each other? Because if they don't, we're not going to talk openly about issues. Um, I call them like politically incorrect secrets in companies. Because they're family run, our website is weak, but we're not going to talk about it because the CEO's daughter designed it. No, we got to talk about it. We're going to talk about the issue. We're not going to talk about the person. Where are we strong? We're really good at getting orders out in 3 days, or we're really good at quality, or we're really good at listening to customers and inventing new products. What are our constraints? Well, some of our suppliers still haven't caught up since the pandemic, maybe, or we can't get labor. Our systems, we're still running off an AS400, and quite frankly, it's not giving us the data to run our businesses. Whatever those things are, we talk about it. What we're hearing is things that are impacting people is inflation is impacting gross margins. Their raw materials are going up, but they feel like they can't pass those along. The war in Ukraine, one of my clients made, I don't work with him anymore, but he made flooring products, and the clay came from the Ukraine. And when the war kicked in, he had to, actively, at the time, we both actively searched and actually found another clay mine in Italy. Israeli war, that's really impacting a lot of like electronic components, computer chips, things like that, escalations in the Red Sea. What we're seeing is if I was somebody right now importing products that were critical to my business from Taiwan, I'd be a little nervous. I'd be building a backup vendor right now in the United States. Interesting, when I did the research, the number of worker strikes is at an all-time high. We have a lot of workers that are just simply not happy, not engaged, labor shortages, employee engagement. They call it the quiet quitting. I don't mind if somebody says, you know what, I'm not on board with the growth. I'm not on board with what you're asking me to do. It's time for me to leave. Great. We'll put together a plan and have you exit, and we'll bring on somebody that matches, what we need to do. But what I don't want is somebody to say, I'm on board, but then every day they just do what they've always done. They do the bare minimum, and that's quiet quitting. And we've got to figure that out. The numbers I'm hearing is as high as 60% of companies are not engaged. They're going through the motions, but they're not engaged. China imports, even though we're putting tariffs on China, one of my clients in the plastics industry is just getting hammered by China imports. They're actually below what it costs him to manufacture. Cash crunch, specific, if you're selling anything that's really expensive and your clients have to take out a loan for it, the loan rates are crazy right now. And then the gray tsunami. If you're not familiar with that term, there are so many boomers retiring every day. Then every time I try to Google how many, the number goes up. These are people that maybe you've had relationships with for 20, 15, 30 years, and now all of a sudden it's a new person. And it's actually a person from a different generation. Some of the best, brightest, smartest people are leaving companies, and they're leaving with knowledge that isn't written anywhere. So again, the gray tsunami are some of the things that are affecting some of my customers. Interesting number, the 60 plus age group is contributing more than 2/3 of the global consumption growth. So if you serve like a couple people I spoke with at a recent event, work with rehabilitation homes, retirement homes, medical services to help people in their home, that business is booming right now. But what else do people over 60 consume, and how can we better understand them and how we can help them with our products and services? How do we make this easy though? Boy, it sure sounds like an awful lot of work. Mark, you want me to assess this? You want me to look at my data? You want me to call customers? You want me to, do a website audit? Boy, I wish there was a make it easy button. Well, there actually is. There's a way that we tune up your plan. As I mentioned, I got trained in scaling up. It's a great book. It's written by Vern Harnish. He actually became a friend. He wrote the foreword in my book on Voice of Customer, by the way. Vern is a huge advocate of getting insights from your customers before you write strategy. But what he's done a brilliant job of in his book is creating all these tools. If you go to scalingup.com and you can download this worksheet right now and your team can start working on it. I asked SCORE to give me everybody's emails, and as long as it's acceptable, I can send you a copy of it. But this one form, a one-page plan, a one-page strategy discussion is something really powerful that senior leadership teams need to have. I see there's a comment in the chat. Yes, please. Okay, I'll definitely get that out to you guys. Sometimes, I'll have a workshop where there's a bunch of companies and I'm walking around helping them with this. But sometimes, you can just use these tools on your own with your own team. Words that you own, a couple words or two that you own, things that make your company unique. I'm in the middle of writing an article for my blog about words salespeople should never use. Best in class, best quality. Remember Charlie Brown, and you'd hear that wah, 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 right? Well, that's what it sounds like to a customer today. Those are table stakes. Those are not what makes you unique. There's an excellent book called Distinctive Competence. I actually heard the author speak, and we actually became friends over time. But what makes you unique? Couple words or two that you own. For example, 3M, it's the science of, applied to life. And then everything they do follows their brand. Big Ass Fans down in Kentucky. I don't know if you've heard of them, but what a fun company. But they make huge fans. And immediately when I walk into a manufacturer and look up and see a fan, I know it's theirs. But they own that. I make really big fans.
Hey,
So,
Mark,
yeah,
we have a comment from Kate.
sure.
She wants to stop and talk about this, so I'm not sure what exactly she's talking about here.
Okay, let me back up.
Words you own is what she's referring to.
Oh, okay. Actually, I have a slide that'll help us here in a minute. When you go to market right now, if I first sat down with you before I met with you, I would go to your website and I would look for words that maybe make you unique. One of my clients makes ball valves and fittings for low pressure applications, but what makes them really unique is some of the materials they use. So my advice to them is let's really talk about what makes us unique. A couple words that we own. We own plastic products for really challenging applications. That's not something any other competitors say. So I hope that answers your question. But it's not a quick answer. We might spend a half a day working with a client, helping them find words that they own. But then we got to look at what we call your sandbox, where your team plays every day. Where are you going to sell? These sound like really basic questions, but you'd be surprised how many sales teams are out there calling on anybody that could fog a mirror, right? No, we want to get the most out of our efforts and out of our investments. Who do we want to sell? What will we sell? And who will you sell it to? Do you sell it to a business owner? Do you sell it to a maintenance manager? Do you sell it to a quality manager? Do you sell it to a plant manager? Do you, every one of those people, we need to define who they are, what you sell, and what markets you're going to sell into, because that's going to really shape our strategy. So as we start working through this document, and again, we're going to go really fast, but you'll get a copy of it. You'll also be able to watch this again, and you're going to get the PDFs. It starts with real simple. Again, I don't want to overcomplicate this. Who and where? Where are our core customers? You can look at your data. Who are they today? What customers do we just absolutely love? They pay on time, they value us, they don't really push us for price reductions. They're profitable. We have good relationships. Who are they as you fill out this form? Then we look at what products and services. Some of my clients have like 4,000 or 5,000 items in their catalog, but there's always a core bunch of products. What are they? What are those products and services that make up, let's say, 80% of your net income? And then what's your brand promise? Quite a few people post-pandemic started working on, on-time delivery because so many people were struggling even to give them a date, let alone hit the dates that they promised. So, there are a couple of customers out there who have a brand promise that if we can't ship on the date that we promised, we'll give you 10% off the invoice. Wow. That's a pretty strong promise. You must really be confident that you can hit that. And then to the right are KPIs, key performance indicators. So we've said who and where we want to sell. We've said what products. We've talked about our brand promise, but what are we going to measure? A lot of people measure what we call lagging indicators, sales, profits, maybe sales from new products. But what about leading indicators? How many meetings did we have? How many quotes did we do? How many phone calls to net new customers did we make? We're tracking all those behaviors that we have found over the years that turn into revenue. I was helping a customer in Louisville, sorry. Louisville is in Kentucky. Louisville is in Ohio. And what we found was if a large customer visits our plant, our sales go up. So one of our key performance indicators was, of our large customers, how many visited our plant? Chances are, if you spend some time on this with your team, you'll figure out what some of those leading indicators are. And then one phrase strategy. Far too often, people speak in paragraphs. One of the things I work with, particularly on salespeople, is having a really short, concise value proposition. Like for example, mine. I help CEOs and senior leadership teams drive explosive growth, and I stop. Most people struggle with the whole stopping part and the silence. What I'm wanting is somebody to raise their hand and say, okay, how do you do that? Well, then I speak in forms of stories, examples, success stories, but you've got to have that one phrase strategy. And again, your team can help shape that. You can read, like I said, my book. You could read Scaling Up. There's a lot of resources out there. I have a couple of blogs on how do you write a value proposition, how you do a value proposition audit. A lot of times the value proposition you had when you started your business is probably needing a tune-up because it might not be resonating with your customers today. So when you work on your one phrase strategy, what are some levers in your business model? What are things you do that drive profitability, determine customer desires, bold, difficult things to execute? Like my one client right now is saying, we will ship your order in 3 days, when most of the competitors take 2 weeks. They've invested, they believe that is their big value opportunity. What they heard, and I actually helped do it, which was the voice of customer, was a lot of their distributors are nervous about the slowing down of sales. So their CFOs have said, look, cash is king. I want to improve cash flow. So that means reduce inventory, partner with people that do just-in-time inventory. And that's actually what my client decided to do. We're going to be the best at shipping people product just on time to help them with their need for cash flow. They also create really great blocking strategies, right? You know yourself, but you also know your competitors. So where are you good and where are they weak? And let's make sure we talk about that. We don't ever want to say, our competitors are terrible. That's not something, I actually talk about that in my training. I never want a salesperson to say that. What I do want to do is know that, for example, my competitor right now is a 14-week lead time and my lead time is 10 days. I might mention that, I know people in my industry are 14 weeks lead time, but ours is 10 days. I'm not saying they're a terrible company. I'm focusing on what we do really well. For example, IKEA, what would you say IKEA does really well? Just put it into the chat. When you think of IKEA, like for example, when my kids were going to college, I spent a lot of time at IKEA, right? For some reason, they get tired of the dorm and then they want to move into an apartment. When you hear IKEA, oh, cheap, modern, what else? When you think of them and you're going through their place, it's a fun experience, huge. Well, what they want to be known for, interestingly, is flat packed. You know how you take it home and you have like, you need a junior engineer to put it together. Not always, but I'm just saying, having some fun. They own flat packed furniture. I don't know anybody else that could claim that ownership. They decided strategically to do it, and look at the growth they're having. I mean, when I lived in Columbus for a short amount of time, that parking lot was always packed. But I know people that travel 2-3 hours to go to an IKEA. So once we start working through all that on the worksheet, then what are some differentiating activities that you could do? Maybe it's content. I actually have a great videographer if any of you need him. He's here in green as well. So many businesses now are adding very short 2 to 3 to 4 minute videos that talk about what makes them different. People really don't seem to want to read. As I hear from people that are reading my book, they usually read like the first 3 or 4 chapters and then they stop. They're distracted. They have a very short attention span. So let's use some tools and activities based on knowing that. But again, we're going to fill out that section, maybe pick, 3 to 5 things that make you different and how you're different than the competitors that you face every day. And then we look at our key thrusts and capabilities. So we've identified your BHAG. Let's just go through the scenario of maybe you just started your business and you want your business to be 300,000 in the next 2 years, next 3 years. What are some of the key chess moves that position you for growth? Well, if I want to do that kind of volume, then I probably need to invest in this. I probably need to make sure that people are finding me on the internet. I probably need to make sure that, I've got a great guy, Charlie. He used to drive a tow motor. God love him. He's out there selling, but maybe I should probably train him. By the way, all these examples I'm giving you are real life examples that I've faced helping people. But what are some of those bold moves? Maybe you need to acquire another company. There's a lot of great companies out there for sale, particularly in Northeast Ohio. But it's a balance of productivity, product, people moves. Maybe you've outgrown one of your senior leaders. Unfortunately, I see this happen all the time. Somebody that was great when we were growing and we got to 3 million, but they don't have the bandwidth or the skills or even the motivation to take us to 20 million. Okay, that's fine. We're not going to get rid of them. We're going to put them in a place where they can add a tremendous amount of value. But as business owners, we're going to need to make some moves and bring in the talent that's going to take us where we want to go. And then know your customers' jobs to be done. There's a wonderful video out there from a professor from Harvard, and it talks about jobs to be done. And he was doing research for Wendy's. And what they were doing research on were their smoothies. And what did people like about them? What didn't people like about them? What job does it do? And what they found was people going through the drive-through use it to just like obviously give them some calories, but also it takes a lot of time to consume. So on your commute to work, on your commute home, it's just like something to do along the way compared to like, let's say an iced tea where you could have it done in 3 minutes. But that little insight drove a whole strategy for Wendy's. But again, if you're interested, go out and Google jobs to be done, Harvard professor, and he does a much better job of explaining this. But we have to know our customers. We have to know our customers intimately. And when you do, I got a couple examples. A machine shop. We have a lot of machine shops in Ohio. One of my largest customers is a machine shop in Louisville, Kentucky. We got to put in our core values. We improved training. We created processes. We often refer to the process as relentless repeatability and then strategic pricing. Well, when that all went into place, he had a 1.4 swing in profit in 1 year. Alpha, a company in East Canton. I loved working at Alpha. I'd still be there if we didn't sell it. But the business was doing, around 10 million when I got there. And then all of a sudden there was a market shift. People were starting to buy music, but it was coming out in CDs as opposed to record albums or cassettes. And the theft was huge. So we went out to stores. Back in the day, it was Camelot Music and Walmart, Best Buy. We asked them, what do you need? How can we help you? And it turns out they needed 3 different products. Well, long story short, we listened, we designed products that solved their needs. We sold over 100 million packages in 18 months, and it was at a significantly higher margin than anything else. A lawn care company, even a lawn care company. Oh, wow, how could I grow a lawn care company? Family-run business. They were doing really well. All of a sudden, they've decided they want to scale. Within 3 years, they went to 12 million, and today they're in 6 states. So don't assume just because of what your business is, it can't grow. Here's a company that actually brought me to Arizona. It was one of my favorite industries. They make vehicles for people in wheelchairs so they can drive again. They were stuck at 14 million for 5 years in a row. Their investors were frustrated. Their CEO was frustrated. I went out there, and the first thing I did was interview people in wheelchairs. We found out what they need, what they value. And one of the things they said was fascinating. I bought your van because it's quiet. Nowhere on their website, in their brochures, did it say quiet. And if you look at that picture, it's because the ramp went into the floor. Most vehicles at that time in that industry folded up in the door and they rattled when you drive. You couldn't even listen to the radio, let alone have a conversation. We took those insights, we turned it into a strategy, and that company, I want to say 6 years later, was around 90 million. So again, voice of customer gives you the unfair advantage. Current customers, we talk to lost customers. Actually, that's really where we get some great insights because they have no relationship with you. They tell us exactly how they feel. We talk to high growth customers. Wow, we really appreciate the growth. What's going on? I see that you've been buying a lot of this. Oh, well, we've discovered that this really does solve this. And then with that insight, you turn it into a campaign and let everybody know, right? Right now, we're doing voice of customer for a company in the building and supply industry where we're calling everybody they quoted but did not win. When we did this for another company that makes really large machining products, in their CRM, the notes from the salespeople were, we lost due to price. But when we interviewed their customers, 40% of the people who didn't buy anything. Most sales are lost to people doing nothing as opposed to competitors. So long story short, once we have that data, it's like we also learned that they've decided this is the year they need to do something. So what we did was we created a campaign calling everybody that we quoted in the past and quickly re-engaging with them. But real important, strategy without customer insights fail to produce explosive growth. Again, you can, like what I would call bare knuckle grow your business. You can work 16, 18 hours a day like a lot of entrepreneurs have to do, or we can grow your company strategically. One of the questions some of the private equity firms ask CEOs when they're looking to buy their company, how many hours a day do you work? And some of the CEOs make the mistake of proudly saying, I work 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day. That's not the business I want to buy. I want to buy a business where you only work 12 hours a week and you're working on the business, not in the business. You've created such a strong business, systems, processes, strong leadership team. You've trained your people. If you need to work 16 to 18 hours a week, there's a misfit somewhere. And that's going to be a lot of work for me if I buy your business. So the question is, how are you going to make it easier to be a customer and harder to be one of your competitors? That's really what I want you to think about when you start working on your strategy. Again, a lot of businesses, when I talk to them, I say, do you have a plan? Oh, yeah. Now, the scary ones is, I says, can I see it? And they point to their forehead. It's all up here. Well, okay, that's more of a wish. It's not a plan. It's really hard for the rest of your team to understand where they fall into helping in that plan. Then they say, oh, no, here's my plan. And they send me an Excel spreadsheet. Great. Now you've identified, sales goals by month, by person, maybe by year, but you never told me how. Where it really falls apart is when we go out to sales and say, just make it happen. Go out and make it happen. We need this amount of growth. Instead, when we go to sales with some of these insights that we have from our customers and actually give them what I would call talking tracks to the ideal customer, that's when we really see some growth. So again, I'm talking a lot about what's in my book, because in case you're not interested, I'm just sharing some of the insights. Again, my name is Mark Allen Roberts. I'm here in the Green area. I live in Green. I have an office in Cleveland, but I love helping businesses grow. That's what I do for fun. Are there any questions? We've got about 4 minutes left. I tried to go really fast. I want to be respectful of your time. As I said, you will get a PDF of these slides to talk over with your team. You will have access to the recording if you want to have your team watch this and have a discussion. If you want to reach out to me, let me find it. In the slide deck, I give you a bunch of things. Like my blog is called No Smoke and Mirrors because that's what I believe. The days of lying to customers or making things up, they're over. I call it commission breath, right? If you ever talk to a salesperson and they're not caring about you, they're just trying to hit their money, the goal that they want to make, that's not what I teach. There's an entire chapter in my book on human-to-human selling. Serve people and you won't worry about money. On LinkedIn, I try to put a couple things out there every week. I don't know, I think it's like 28, 30,000 people, but if you're interested, connect. On my blog, I try to put something useful out there. There's a connection for my book on explosive growth, my phone number, my email. But again, are there any questions, anything that before we end our time together that I can help you with? I mean, my goal is to help you. I really enjoy helping Ohio-based companies and surrounding states scale. Whether you want to scale your company for your family and your next generation, or whether you want to scale and sell it and bless your family with that kind of wealth, that's what I love to do. And that's what I've done for just under 40 years. I see there might be a question. What advice would you give a farming business? I would have to have a lot of questions. How big is your farm? What do you farm? Like, for example, one lady reached out to me and her passion is mushrooms. And she got into the mushroom business. And she was really frustrated that she wasn't selling mushrooms to like Giant Eagle and other people. Well, we adjusted her strategy. She was actually growing very rare mushrooms, not just standard mushrooms. And what we did was we actually connected her with chefs at very nice restaurants, and now her business is booming. So I would probably need to know in your farming business, what do you make? Who do you serve? What makes you unique? Quite a few people, for example, don't want any chemicals, don't want any seeds that have been altered. I mean, if that's who you are, then we would talk about it. There was a hops manufacturer I worked with out west, and I would say 70% of his crop looked like a mess because he had weeds growing all over everything. Well, no, the fastest growing segment in the beer business was beer hops without any chemicals. So I hope that helps you. All right, well, I want to wrap up. I hope you enjoyed our time together today. If I can help you, reach out. As I said, SCORE is a wonderful organization. They have so many people that have helped companies grow. They'll help you, maybe avoid some of the costly mistakes a lot of people make. But feel free to reach out. I see a couple quick comments and then we'll end it. Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Small business, original art and crafts designs. What makes your business unique? What is the shopping experience like? Who are the people that are currently spending money there? And find more people like them would be my quick advice. But again, that's why we follow these tools and processes and instruments. We don't want to guess. We don't want to hear what's in your gut. We don't want to hear what's always worked. We want to do quite a bit of assessment up front. It's the longest part of our working together is getting data, actionable data. One of the companies I worked for that does training has a coffee mug and it says, your opinion, although interesting, is irrelevant. And what they mean by that is you have an opinion, based on, things that you've experienced in your business, but the opinion that matters most is your customers. So if there's one thing I leave you with is make sure you understand what they're going through and how you solve problems for them. So thank you. Thank you, Score, for inviting me.
Mark, thank you. That was a great presentation. That's something we both have in common. We want to help small businesses, right? Or businesses of any size. So I hope that you all enjoyed it as much as I did. And with that, we'll call it a day. Thanks again, Mark. So long, everyone.